Hello everybody, my name is Dratnos, and in today's video I'm going to share with you some strategies and wisdom perhaps that might help you gearing up fresh characters here in patch 10.0.5 and taking them from questing greens or whatever up to, as good gear as you can get your hands on. This is going to be aimed at kind of mostly, I guess it'll be mostly useful for people that are doing a second or further character rather than just their first character, but I'll try and make sure that I specify where things require you to have a main versus where things don't. And of course, some of these strategies are going to be dependent on what kind of content you can actually get your alt character into. The best thing, of course, is to get yourself carried through the hardest content, but I'm going to make sure that I go through all the different things that are relevant. So first of all, first thing to do once you hit level 70, it is level 70 this expansion. Yeah, it is. It's level 70 this expansion, if you were wondering. The auction house is your friend when it comes to going from item level 290 to item level 343. You can get this 343 gear rather cheap for, a sum of like 20k. You can get your character out in a full set of that. Now, if that's a lot of gold to you, if that's something that you don't, if you want your alt to be making you gold rather than costing you gold, then you can ignore this initial step. But that is one of the easiest ways to at least make some of your, BFA or Shadowlands gear or whatever a little bit less bad. One thing I'm not going to talk about at all in this video is PvP related gearing, although it's worth noting that the auction house gear is technically PvP gear, so it does mean that if you do want to PvP on a fresh character, this actually comes with a huge item level bump in PvP that can make it a lot less painful to get started in doing that. But other than that, I'm not going to talk about PvP as a source of items, but it's worth noting that there are items that come from PvP. I just don't really know how they work or how any of that works. I haven't PvP'd at all this expansion pack. Okay, so next thing to note is that Sparks of Ingenuity, you can skip through all of this on your alts and get 5 right away, plus get the bottle detector, the essence detector, that lets you get it to drop at a very low drop rate from all forms of content. Now, I wouldn't count on getting a 6th at any reasonable expectation unless you're playing a whole lot. It seems like you get quite a bit less than 1 per character per week unless you're playing quite a lot on a given character. I've done, I had 3 different characters last week that had 6 slots in their Great Vault filled up, and only one of them got a spark from this essence detector, so it seems like it's a pretty low chance, so I would count on only getting these first 5, but you can use that to craft yourself item level 3 up to 392 gear instantly, because you can send Primal Chaos to your alts. That's something that, as of the time of recording this video, is 4 hours old. From Raboul in Valdrakken, you can buy 60 Primal Chaos for the cost of 80 Primal Chaos, but it's account-wide. So if you have a main character that is swimming in Primal Chaos, you can send over enough to your alts that they can create any of the pieces of gear that require Sparks and Primal Chaos. Now, this, in order to get higher than the 380 or 392 point, you're going to need a Primal Infusion or a Concentrated Primal Infusion, which those are going to require you to actually do quite a bit of content, except for one regular Primal Infusion is available from a short quest line that you can get at the top of Valdrakken that will say, it'll send you to Tierhold real quick, you'll kill 1 dragon, and then it will tell you to kill Raszageth. And if you do that little quest line, you can get 1 full Primal Infusion, the one that would normally take 10 heroic boss kills or 11 keys to complete, and also 100 Primal Chaos. You just get the infusion straight up, so you don't have to spend that extra chaos, and you get a little bit of extra chaos as well. You do have to kill Raszageth, but you can kill Raszageth on any difficulty for that quest, so it's a good early step on a character. As soon as you're eligible to queue for LFR, get that quest, go kill the Raszageth, get yourself a Primal Infusion, and you can make yourself a 405 piece instead. If you want to upgrade your crafted gear to 418, of course, that's going to require doing 16 keys, or mythic level raid content, or maybe some from PvP. I don't know how that works, but that's how you'd get your hands on those things. Now, that was basically my strategy, and then I was using the Great Vault at a pretty slow rate. So what I would do is I would just get my friends to help me do 1 key on my Radius character for the first few weeks of its life to just collect some kind of free, in the sense of almost anything you could get out of a one slot Great Vault would be good as long as you had really bad gear, right? As half of your items are like this character now has a lot of good items, and so many of my Great Vault potential items I could see could be bad, right? I could see shoulders that couldn't be an upgrade. I could see gloves that wouldn't be an upgrade, right? But when your character is really weak, anything you'd see in your Great Vault is good. So that's a good time to just get one item in your one slot in your Great Vault, leave it on the back burner for a couple of weeks, do a little bit of stuff on it to get that Great Vault, which is really powerful. Now, obviously, that is something that would rely on having people that can carry you through content that your character has no business being in. So if that's not something that's available to you, you can ignore that particular piece of advice, and most of the other stuff here should still be relevant to you. Speaking of things that are probably irrelevant to most people, there are BOEs on the auction house that are better than the 343 stuff. There's even mythic BOEs now that you can get. You can get your hands on 415 pieces from the auction house. Obviously, the price tag on some of these things is pretty high, but depending on what sort of player you are, you might be able to take a look at some of these pieces and be like, you know what, 389 bracers with a socket at this price point, potentially something that I'm interested in. So if depending on what your alt is for, you might be interested in this sort of thing, especially if you're trying to like make an alt for high M plus. If you can snipe a mythic avoidance BOE or something like that, that could be potentially better than anything you'd realistically get anywhere else. So it is worth checking to see what the prices are like on your auction house, if that's something like, obviously depending on how intimidating these numbers are next to these items. Okay, another system that people have largely relegated to irrelevance in their minds, at least among the kind of mythic rating people that I know, is Primal Storms. Primal Storms are actually a pretty good source of a little bit of 385 gear per week. So you can get a quest from Valdrakken from inside this little hut here that will send you to the Primal Storms. And the Primal Storms, my map add-ons make this almost impossible to see, but if you look really closely, there's a Primal Storm going on in Tierhold right now. There's like 2 up at any given time. There's one going on here in the Cobalt Assembly. And there's 4 different elements of Primal Storms. If you kill mobs in the Primal Storms area, they will drop this currency called Elemental Overflow. You can use that to purchase like eye level 369 gear. But you also can get these storm sigils that Dragonbane Keep that I'm AFKing is about to pop. That's really good. You can also get these storm sigils. Now the storm sigils come from your first like 75 elemental overflow of the week, and then you can also get storm sigils from killing mobs. Each type of primal element can drop a quest item that you turn in for 2 storm sigils each week. So you can get 2 from earth, 2 from air, 2 from fire, 2 sigils from water, whatever the last one is, and that can get you a reasonable amount of storm sigils. And the storm sigils can then be used to upgrade the 369 gear into 385 gear. So I'm actually doing that. I've got 385 boots and 385 belt because I had 372s in these slots. And there's actually a reasonable 2-set on it as well. Increases your highest secondary stat by 340. So I don't have any higher item level stuff to replace these with, but even if I got like a 398 belt or something like that, it probably wouldn't beat this 2-set until I also got some better boots. So that's something you can do to potentially fill out your weakest slots, is get some Primal Storm gear. Or if you're somebody who's not interested at all in doing any of the group content and stuff, then getting a full set of 385 Primal Infused gear. The problem is it is pretty heavily weekly time gated. It's not easy to get. I don't think you can get more than like 10 or so storm sigils per week. You can also get some good stuff from the Primal Future now as well. That gives you elemental overflow and some new currencies, and you can buy some like 389 rings and stuff and trinkets, I think, if you farm the stuff in the Primal Future. So that's worth potentially doing as well, especially if you are that kind of solo-oriented player. If you're that solo-oriented player, also always check the world quests. And potentially try toggling on War Mode and seeing if there's any interesting War Mode only world quests. Most world quests reset halfway through the week, and then on the weekly reset. The War Mode ones reset every single day, though. So check those if you're in a spot where you're hurting for certain items, and sometimes you can see, 376 two-hander or whatever coming from a world quest, which can be really good. Okay. Other than that, there's kind of the general standard stuff that can drop gear, such as Dragonbane Keep, which I'm currently parked nearby, so I will get credit when it gets finished. Community Feast, Aiding the Accord, all that kind of stuff that if you had a main character that you were kind of min-maxing in the first couple weeks of this expansion, you might remember. You can do that on your alts as well. One of the reasons to do this, even if you don't care about the relatively low item level rewards that it can give, is that you can get your sparks from this content as well. So if you are somebody who, like me, you know, I could use a couple more sparks on this character to finish out my gear. I'm trying to make sure that I get, you know, these easy to obtain credit from the Dragonbane Keep, from Community Feast. So I actually have a weak aura that I'll link in the description as well that I yoinked that lets me track when this is. And then if I'm ever on a character, if I'm ever recording a YouTube video, something like that, just AFK one of these little events and get a little bit of credit towards that. I think that's about all of the wisdom that I have to impart to you. I guess one thing as well, if you maybe missed the first couple weeks when it was really hyped, the Cobalt Assembly, they nerfed how good this was as a leveling strategy, but you can actually still farm rep here and get a 389 ring with actually a reasonable proc on it as well. It's a little bit under budget in terms of stats, but it has a reasonably good proc on it. I've replaced this thing with like a 402 ring pretty happily. Just haven't had one drop for me, but yeah, that's a good piece of stopgap gear to get for the time being, and it takes a couple of hours to grind enough rep to buy yourself one of those. So depending on what your character's for, if you're one of those really solo-oriented players, you could do that, or like outdoor world content players, you could do that. Or you can also do the Obsidian Citadel quests. That area is another way of getting yourself, you know, pretty reliable 385-ish gear from the quests. A lot of the gear from those sorts of quests and from world quests does scale with your item level as well. So as your item level gets better, those rewards will get better up to a point of like 385-ish. Okay, I think that's about all. One more thing. Renown. There are actually some reasonably good rewards early in the Renown track, 376 gloves. Now, it's unlikely that you would naturally get to Renown 12 before 376 gloves become obsolete, but it's not impossible, especially if you're on an alt, because once your main reaches Renown 20, you actually have 200% increased Renown gain below rank 10, and 100% increased Renown gain between ranks 10 and 20, right? And so you could actually pretty feasibly, especially if you identify one or two reputations that you wanted to grind anyways on that character, because it's like a leatherworking character, so you're getting Centaur rep because you want leatherworking patterns, something like that. You actually might pick up the ability to buy some relevant equipment before it becomes obsolete off of the Renown tracks as well. If you go super hard and you finish the entire track, you also get an extra Primal Infusion as well. So it's pretty rare, I would say, for this to happen for an alt in a way that matters, but yeah. That's information worth having, in case you didn't. Okay. I think that's all that I have for you. I guess one final piece of advice is, in terms of the Primal Infusions and stuff, and the concentrated Primal Infusions, two-handed weapons cost you 2 sparks. But if you want to upgrade one to 405 or to 418, it only costs you 1 infusion to do that. So in terms of efficiency, it's actually really efficient to buy and then upgrade a two-handed weapon. Because if you are using Primal Infusions or concentrated Primal Infusions, that's a really good way to get more bang for your buck out of that resource. The sparks you do have to pay double on, but the Primal Infusion or concentrated Primal Infusion you don't. So really good way to get some extra juice there. Okay, that I think is actually everything. So I'm sure I've missed some stuff. Let me know down in the comments any cool tips you have for getting gear on fresh characters, anything that I've forgotten in here. Hope you enjoyed this video. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one. Bye. Okay, one more thing. Check the weekly quests. Check the weekly quests every week. Go into your suggested content and see what the bonus events is. And if it's Mythic Dungeons or Time Walking, you can get some pretty good raid gear, potentially, either normal or heroic, depending on whether it's Time Walking or Mythic Dungeons, out of that. And yeah, nice little easy way to get a little bit of extra gear. Make sure you accept those on your alts. All right, that's it for real. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one. Bye.